kill Henry Marshall.
But Johnson's dark dealings were not confined to Texas. In late summer 1963, one of his long-term partners in crime was about to be exposed for corruption by a Senate investigation.
Bobby Baker was the secretary to the Senate majority. Basically, he was the secretary for the Senate, and he was one of Lyndon Johnson's closest associates. And everything that Lyndon Johnson wanted to perpetrate, he had Bobby's help. Essentially, if somebody wanted to get a military contract and they wanted influence of Lyndon Johnson to help them, they had to pay off Bobby Baker, who would then pay off Lyndon Johnson. It's the world of bribes. Bobby Baker was involved in a call girl service. He was involved in real estate scams. He was involved in dealings with organized crime. He was in dealings with oil men, particularly Clint Murchison, an oil millionaire from Texas. So as a result of all this, Bobby Baker was in big trouble. And with a little bit of inspiration on the part of the Kennedys, if they could get Bobby Baker to talk, Lyndon was all done. Lyndon Baines Johnson, if Robert Kennedy had his way, would not only not be on the 1964 ticket as the vice presidential candidate, but he would go to jail for the corruption that he was involved with.
Although Johnson faced political extinction at the hands of the Kennedys, he had powerful allies with their own agendas that threatened the president, as researcher Gregory Burnham explains.
And people would think that he had no enemies. He was so popular, he smiled, he appeared happy. Everyone loved him worldwide. But what people don't seem to understand is behind the scenes, he was making changes, and he was making them decisively, and he was taking some very, very daring steps. He was committed to pull out of Vietnam. By October, he had signed a document, an SAM 263, to that effect. 1,000 troops home by Christmas, and all personnel out of Vietnam by 1965. But that wasn't very good for the military-industrial complex. Is abolishing the Central Intelligence Agency, pulling their teeth, holding them to task, back to why they were originally created by Truman. Their original mandate by law is only to coordinate intelligence, not to create the Bay of Pigs. NSAM 55 told the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that the CIA no longer can do that, and any military operation has to come directly from them to the president, period. That kind of a document really causes problems.
Make a comment about something which a lot of folks haven't heard too much about. Did you know about this article by Arthur Kroc? Younger people are saying, who's Arthur Kroc? Arthur Kroc was the single most respected journalist in America in the 1960s. He wrote on the editorial page of the New York Times. He was very close to the Kennedys. In fact, Joseph Kennedy, John Kennedy's father's first book was ghostwritten by Arthur Kroc, and young John Kennedy, when he was a young man, and worked on his thesis, Why England Slept, he wrote it in Arthur Kroc's Georgetown Library with the help of Arthur Kroc, and then Arthur Kroc had it turned into a book and got him a literary agent. That's how close he was. John Kennedy, when he wanted to speak to the American people, talked to Arthur Kroc, and Arthur Kroc would publish material. This is October 3rd, 1963, editorial page of the New York Times. Arthur Kroc's column called The Intra-Administration War in Vietnam. And Arthur Kroc is saying John Kennedy has declared war on the Central Intelligence Agency, and John Kennedy wants the American people to know there's some very serious problems. And then he goes on to say, twice, according to a high United States source, twice the CIA flatly refused to carry out instructions from Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge, that was Kennedy's ambassador to Vietnam. And in one instance, frustrated plan of action Mr. Lodge brought from Washington, from John Kennedy, because the agency disagreed with it. You like that? The CIA disagreed with it. They don't do what the president says. Then it goes on. Listen to this. The CIA's growth was likened to a malignancy, which the very high official was not sure even the White House could control any longer. And listen to this. If the United States ever experiences an attempt at a coup to overthrow the government, it will come from the CIA. That's John Kennedy talking to the American people in October. The next month they blew his head off. And there's the Warren Commission, and they don't ask Arthur Kroc where'd you get this information that John Kennedy was talking, or someone on his behalf was talking, to you about the CIA being possibly involved in a coup? If there was a coup, it would come from the CIA.
There is now considerable evidence of Oswald's links with agents from the CIA and the FBI in the months before the assassination. In August 1963 in Dallas, the CIA operative Antonio Veciana met with his case officer Maurice Bishop. Bishop was the CIA coordinator of the most violent anti-Castro exile group. And in Dallas, he also met with Lee Harvey Oswald.
I saw Lee Harvey Oswald in Dallas in a meeting of 10 or 15 minutes with Mr. Maurice Bishop in Dallas at that time.
And you feel certain that Oswald was working with or associated with American intelligence?
Well, at least he was associated with Maurice Bishop. And if Maurice Bishop was intelligence, he was working for the intelligence service in the United States, I don't doubt that he was working with him.
The Select Committee on Assassinations will at this time come to order.
The most damaging sealed documents of the House Select Committee on Assassinations accuse high-ranking officials of the Central Intelligence Agency of lying to the people of the United States about Lee Harvey Oswald. House investigators believe this man, David Atlee Phillips, met with Oswald 2 months before the assassination. Phillips was the CIA's chief of Western Hemisphere operations and was in charge, among other things, of plots against Fidel Castro. According to the secret reports, Antonio Veciana, a leader of anti-Castro Cubans directed by the CIA, saw Oswald talking to a senior CIA agent he knew by the cover name Maurice Bishop. Veciana provided enough information for House investigators to compile this sketch of the agent who met Oswald. Could it have been Phillips? Investigators believe it was. Phillips denied under oath that he knew Oswald, but House investigators did not believe him and wanted him charged with perjury. The government declined to prosecute, leaving investigators furious. The director of the CIA in 1963 was John McCone. He caused a sensation among committee staffers when he admitted there was an agent using the cover name Bishop. But a secret memo reveals he was allowed to reverse his testimony. A CIA lawyer wrote the committee, "I should inform you that he had been in error." In summary, Mr. McCone withdraws his statements on this point. The man who fingered Maurice Bishop, Antonio Veciana, was shot in the head soon after testifying, but survived. Frightened, he will no longer talk about the case. We caught up with him in Florida.
They wounded me in the head. He trying to kill me.
You know why? Why would anybody?
I don't know. Perhaps the FBI knows. The FBI knows.
Did they tell you?
No. Ask him. Ask them.
David Atlee Phillips died of cancer in 1988. Investigators believe Phillips was angry at JFK for botching the Cuban Bay of Pigs operation.
Did you kill the president?
The second explosive revelation in the sealed documents also links the CIA directly to Oswald. While living in Dallas, Oswald was befriended by Russian-born George de Mohrenschildt. Investigators determined he was a contract agent for the CIA in Central America and the Caribbean. In 1977, moments before he was to be interviewed by House investigators, de Mohrenschildt blew his brains out with a 20-gauge shotgun. House investigators believe he was a crucial link between the CIA and Lee Harvey Oswald.
There is no question that the sealed JFK files are extremely embarrassing for the CIA. House investigators have told Inside Edition that the agency did not fully cooperate in their investigation and that the CIA had final say in the report that the House Assassinations Committee made public. Thus, the public report makes no mention of the CIA's links with Lee Harvey Oswald. But the secret documents are another story.
One interesting sidelight, the movie JFK was partially based on Jim Garrison's investigation in New Orleans. Well, House investigators uncovered evidence that the CIA planted 9 agents inside the Garrison investigation to feed him false information and to report back to Langley on what Garrison was finding out.
What do you think about George de Mohrenschildt? Is there some accurate